My guest on the potty today is none other than Australian running legend, Holly Ranson. A couple of years ago at the 24-hour World Champs, she reset all Australian distance records, running an incredible 274 kilometres. So for context, that's like running 6.5 3-hour 40 marathons back to back. And that also reset the 12-hour 100-mile and 200k women's records in Australia. She placed second in that event and would have broken the previous year's world record if it wasn't for the fact that she finished second. Still amazing. And then last year at Dead Cow, so the Masters event for the Backyard Ultra, she ran 61 loops, 408 kilometres straight, setting the new Australian female record for the Backyard Ultra. Her most recent race that we discussed was her 100-mile race debut at the Western States. So, a massive achievement for an Aussie to get over there and compete. She finished 15th in her 100-mile debut in what was the history of the race's fastest ever performance, male or female. And just for the context for how fast this race is getting, that result would have got her second just 4 years ago. So she is doing an incredible job considering it was the first time on course. And we go into all of her experiences within the race, where she lost sight in one eye after just 6 kilometres and all the things that she had to problem solve along the way. We talk about her background in triathlon, in cycling, her issues with bone stress fractures, how she's overcome those with strength training and nutrition, some of the issues that we see within the Australian trail running community about getting athlete support to become professionals and represent Australia on the global stage. Some really engaging conversation that I thoroughly enjoyed on that topic. So without any further delay, I'll give you my conversation with Holly Ranson. Thanks so much for joining me. You are my very first guest on the podcast. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, is actually have a chat to not only runners that are at the top of the sport, but also like everyday people as well. So thank you so much for being my very first guest, Holly.
Oh, thanks, Benny. I didn't realize I was your first guest, so I'm very honored.
Yeah, you've been at the top of my list. It was funny when I was sitting there on my phone the other day, and I was typing up the message, and I was like, oh, is she going to want to come on? Will she want to do? And then you'd responded within like an hour, I think. And I was like, sick. Sometimes all you got to do is ask. Let's go.
Oh,
Let's do
wow.
it.
I like podcasts. I enjoy podcasts. I'm not very good at social media. So actually, the fact that you got a response from me within an hour is pretty impressive. That doesn't happen very often.
Look, I guess, like I said earlier, before we started off camera, I want to cover a multitude of different topics today. But I guess the first and most obvious one is your recent adventure over in the US at Western States. What was the experience like racing over there compared to like other races that we have here domestically? Was it really like a massive step up in, I guess, like environment and exposure? What was the whole build up like for you?
Oh, it was an incredible experience. Definitely changed my whole perspective on the sport and the level of racing. I think just the competition, the level that those women and men, of course, but obviously I'm more invested in the women's race, it's just amazing. And it really opened my eyes to the fact that we don't have that level of competition here in Australia. And a lot of the other challenges that we face, which I think you've actually pretty well described in some of your previous podcasts. But yeah, definitely looking at how the professionalization of the sport overseas has taken place at a much faster rate than what it has here. And the hype around the race, the amount of media coverage. In fact, I believe there was one media person for every runner in the race. So 370 entrants and about the same number of media people. And you could see that when you went anywhere near those top pros, they've just got this entourage around them of people videoing and taking photos. And that's pretty foreign. That's not an experience that we see happening in Australia yet.
No, absolutely not. And how was that for you being out on course and seeing that? Did it change the way that, I guess you were being aware of what you were doing in the race, or is it a matter of like once you're in it, like it's sort of got the blinkers on?
It's funny. you think that you're going to see all these people out on course, and I even think that in races in Australia, but then you always end up on your own, and you're thinking, there's so many people in this race. How can I be feel like I'm the only person on the planet? But the same thing pretty much happened. So I wasn't really aware of it during the race, except for when you get to the aid stations and you could see it. And also because I was so far behind the lead people, again, it wasn't as huge as it would have been at that front of the field. But going through Forest Hill, there's 2 kilometers of people just chasing you with cameras and yelling and screaming. And it's like this tunnel of just joy and overwhelming emotions. It's crazy. Yeah, completely different experience to racing in Australia.
So would you say it's been the peak race experience that you've ever had in your life?
Yes, I would. In terms of the hype, the crew, like the aid stations, the whole experience. I think the community around the race and the history behind it and all the traditions that go along with it play a big part in that as well.
Yeah, interesting. And one thing I wanted to ask with respect to how they race over in the States, it's apparent to me in a lot of the content that we see online is the support that the runners are given through aid stations and the fact that you're seeing these guys run 100 milers in, just race belts. Like some of them aren't even wearing packs. Like, do you think that is advantageous to not only the runner and the performance they put it out, but then the end product that Western States basically delivers? Do you think it's a net positive to be able to provide that much support?
Yes, I think so. I think if you don't have the crude aspect of it and the pacing aspect of it, which a lot of people have been arguing that elite runners shouldn't be allowed to have paces anymore, I think that would really detract from the atmosphere of the race. I think a lot of the hype around it is due to being able to include so many people in your team. And I think people like watching the transitions of the elite athletes, especially those ones with the professional teams that they've got 10 people around them. And it's like, an F1 pit stop. You've got one person doing sunscreen and one person doing ice in the sleeves and one person dipping your hat in water. And it just looks cool to watch. I think people enjoy that. I think that's why the live stream gets so many participants in it. And if you took that all away, I think a lot of the outside interest in the race would fall away as well.
Yeah, interesting. And do you think there's room for that to occur in Australia? Like, what do you think the bottlenecks are? Do you think it's the fact that we just have such a small population and large area size? Like, that's some of the stuff that I've mentioned on my podcast before. And yeah, like, I'm interested to see, like, now that you've gone and experienced yourself, like, are there any obvious changes that you think could be made here in Australia?
Or I think you're right. I think the small population and the big distances is a key part of it. I think, and actually, I know this from talking to people in the States, and even brands in Australia, that the amount of money brands have got as a marketing budget in Australia is a tiny fraction of what they have in the States or in Europe. For example, I was talking to an athlete manager called Kelly Newland, who works from Boulder, manages a lot of high profile athletes. And she said when she's investigated, she's asked, for example, the North Face, what's your marketing budget for Australia? And they say, well, it's Australia and New Zealand combined, and it's 100K. And you know that they might be giving one athlete 100K in the States. So to have that as the total marketing budget for two whole countries, you can see why without that investment in it, and also I think we are lacking a bit of structure and guidance in terms of our governing body. I think there's not a lot of direction. I think there's some things that can be done, but I don't know whether some of the challenges like the distance and the even the level of competition, because it's not as exciting to watch a race where, say, a woman wins and the second woman comes in an hour or an hour and a half later, people are going to get lost viewing that. They're just going to tune out. So I think when the racing is close, that makes for better viewing. But I guess it's partly population, it's partly terrain, it's partly the fact that we don't really have any full-time professionals in this country because there's no investment by the brand. So it's really a chicken and egg situation, and I'm not really that sure how we dig our way out of it. I guess we've just got to try keep getting new people into the sport and trying to push the media coverage, even if you think not many people are going to join. We've seen things like the live streams of the backyard ultras that get participants, and I know it's a small number in the scheme of things, but all we can do is keep doing that and build it, and they will come hopefully.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you say that. And I don't want to steer away from Western states too much because I'm interested to actually hear about your race experience. But I was talking to a woman in DMs yesterday about this very thing and how Tim, invested all that money into the Dead Cow documentary a couple of years ago. And like, look what it did for that race. It literally created everything that was Masters and the event that you had so much success at last year. And the fact that it now gets spoken about alongside bigs and stuff like that, it shows what can happen, and all you need is that one breakthrough result. Like, yes, it took amazing performances from Phil and Sam to create that drama, and the fact that Sam was coughing up blood and all this sort of stuff, like it was very theatrical, but that's, you need the cameras there for those moments, to capture it. And I think that's what a lot of these big races in the States are doing so well, is it's not even just the front of field. It's actually seeing these battlers come through in like golden hour and stuff like that. Like, I don't know if you saw that one woman, I'm not sure in what time she came through, but there was just blood all over her face. She'd had that massive stack. Like, they're the stories that I think are worth sharing as well, because I think there's an argument to be made that certain people would relate even more with the ability of that person versus the elites. It's like, yes, we want to treasure the elites and have them on the pedestal from a fandom perspective, but then to actually, if money is the issue, if you're saying, that these brands only have 100K budget for a whole nation, it's like, well, we rely on the 99% that are probably just aiming to finish the race to try and garner some of the footholds that are going to then, get them buying all the race kit, the shoes, the supplements to hopefully draw in more attention and get you guys paid.
Yeah, and golden hour is just incredible. I remember the lady you're talking about, and she actually missed the cutoff, I think, by a few minutes. And I think
Wow.
that is, yeah, those things are the things that people can relate to and want to see. They want to see that emotion. I think sometimes, even though it's amazing to watch the elites because it's their job, it's not, there's not as many emotions often. I find there are some, like Tara Dower, for example. I know she's one of your favorites. She's a great one for showing emotion, but there's others that they crossed the line and they could have been out for a Sunday stroll. You would never know that they'd just done something so phenomenal. So yeah, I do think it's important to show the whole spectrum of experiences, but it takes that investment of time and money by someone like Tim. I know UTA had a good live stream and I think people
Mm.
appreciated that, but that's coming from a company that's got tons of money,
Yeah.
from us, of course, paying our
Yes.
entry fees. But there's a lot of community run events out there that just can't really afford to do that, or they might take place in places that are so remote where it's not actually, they can't actually do that. So, yeah, that's the challenging nature of trail running, I guess.
I know, right? I think you're right. I think the remoteness of it all is such a big challenge. Like I ran Cape to Cape last month over in Western Australia, and some of that is like quite remote. And then I've got Scenic Rim, 100 mile in a couple of weeks. That's going to be the first one. And like knowing there's a 40K section that's like unsupported. I think there's a water station about halfway through, but no crew, nothing. There's not going to be anyone out there. So like they're like logistical things, not only as a runner, but it's like, yeah, how do you promote that? And do certain events even want that sort of growth? Like, do they like to stay small? It's, like you look at, like Coast to Cozzy, for example, like they're quite deliberate about their messaging and why they're in it, and the fact that, you have to write the essay to get entry and stuff like that. I think there's other sides of it that is cool, that keeps that sanctity and wants to respect the land. But yeah, I think we've also, we can't just let the current generation gatekeep too much either. I think there's an element where, yeah, if we are going to get the exposure that we want as Australians, we've got to be telling these stories. Like, it's still blows my mind that you're not sponsored. Like, I don't know how that, you know what I mean? Like, you've got all the ability in the world, you've got all these records. It's like, how is there no brand that's interested in, like, even if it's just like a 1 year contract, it's like, yep, sweet, we're going to send you over here, you shoot your shot, and almost like put the pressure back on you. Like, I think someone like you would actually thrive in that environment to be given that opportunity. And it's like, I worked for this, I want this. Like, if that opportunity was thrust upon you, is that something that you're chasing, like to become a professional?
Yeah, absolutely. And I am still working on it. I've got, a couple of meetings coming up this week and next week. And as I said, I've been talking to the athlete manager in the US, and her advice actually is to move to the US at least for a big chunk of the year. And that's sort of what I'm hearing in a lot of places, because overseas athletes can get sponsored in the US, but just in Australia, there just isn't enough money. And I've got a couple of small deals like Creepers Socks, which is a New Zealand brand. Yeah, so I'm on a 3 year contract with them, but it's mostly product, and what you need in order to race consistently at an international level is the money for travel, because it's just so expensive to get anywhere from Australia, as you know. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, getting cash is difficult, but it's not all about results. And I know that. I know brands are looking more for influencers than they are for people that are more invested in being consistent performers. And so I think that's probably why I haven't perhaps been a person that many brands are looking to sponsor, because I am really focused on my performance, because the process of doing it just means so much to me. Whereas a lot of people invest a lot of time into social media and selling things, and that's what brands want, but it's not as aligned with my values or the way I want to spend my time. So yeah, it's a tricky one, but I think, like Rachel Entrechan says, sometimes you just got to be patient and wait for something to come along that aligns with you and your values. And yeah, I have faith that things will happen. And I have to have faith because I've thrown in my job and just concentrated on this running things for a few months. So yeah, I'm going to stick it out for a little while longer, and just have the faith that something positive is going to come eventually.
Well, I think anytime anyone goes all in, I think it's very Australian to, when your back's against the wall, is to say, bugger this, let's have a go. And I've got full faith that good things will come your way. And like, I think Entrican, it's obviously well, she's not it, she's the hot topic at the moment. And I think it's crazy because you see the result that she, conjured up at Cocodona, but most people wouldn't know. It's like, that's a three-peat,
Yeah.
like, and it took
Yeah.
that long and there was still no sponsorship. Like, it took all of this to really get, like, it blows me away. In a sport where you have to give probably more of your time than just about any other sport, you've probably got maybe triathlon and cycling that would parallel alongside it. Um, it's crazy how underpaid even the top guys are. Like, forget the debate about male, female, like gender gaps and stuff like that. I think the sport, like, and that's where I think we need to be careful too, that we don't get stuck in the weeds there of like sex differences and just be like, hey, like, our sport is too small to be like arguing amongst ourselves. Like, we need to like look at the sport and say, like, how does ultra get bigger? Like, whatever the hat that is, whether it's 50K milers, backyards, it's like, what can we do to help one another get the exposure? And then, all boats, rise on that rising tide.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to keep that perspective that we are such a small sport, and a lot of people are making those noises like the athletes should be paid more athletes should be sponsored, and all these sorts of things. But that can only happen when the money's in the sport. And if there's practical constraints on how many people we can have in this sport, because a lot of the races are raced in places where you just can't have that many people on the trail. For example, Western States, 10,000 people would enter Western States if that was possible every year, but it isn't, because they're limited by the number of people they're allowed to have go through that wilderness area. And I think, where we conduct these events, usually that is going to be a limitation. So perhaps the answer lies in expanding the formats that can have more people, like your backyard ultras, your track ultras, your road ultras. Even though, yeah, I guess for a lot of us, our heart is with the trails, but if we can diversify and do a bit of everything, then yeah, we make more space on the trails and we can grow the sport as well.
Yeah, I wonder if there's even room to do like multiple events at the same course in a calendar year. I've noticed that like the Spine race in the UK, they have a summer and a winter version of it. And I mean, that obviously brings a whole host of different challenges when you're running across the UK in a winter, with such a short day and stuff like that. And so they have like separate course records for the time of year that it's run. So I wonder if there's opportunities. Obviously, these are things that I just don't know, and I'm really excited to try and connect with more race directors, not only domestically but internationally, and just be like, what goes into it? What are we naive and sulking about that we don't know actually happens behind the scenes? And it's not necessarily that they don't want to make these changes. It's they're hamstrung by, parks and wildlife and all that sort of stuff that limits your ability to expand certain things. Because that's one thing I noticed over in the Cape is how loyal and dedicated the local community is to that track. They were saying that in the first year that they ran it, some of the course markings and stuff that they had on there, they felt like they did a pretty good job of not like putting too many out there, because obviously it could like turn into litter if it fell away or someone pulled it down or whatever. And they said that they weren't happy with it, so they put even less out there on certain sections. But the race director Sean, he was even jesting. He's like, "As I'm telling you this now, I can guarantee you locals are pulling down our signs." And like it was happening. It's crazy how protective they are, but in a certain way, like I kind of respect it as well, because I've never run a trail that has been so well maintained. So I do see both sides of it. I even look at, UTA, and it's like 8,000 people bloody running down there with, some of the weather and stuff like that, and what that does to the track itself, and how long does that take to repair naturally, and what does that look like for sustainability? Like if we keep doing that year on year, is it enough for it to repair? And yeah, it is tricky. And unfortunately, I don't think we're going to appease everyone, but maybe that's not the point either. That's probably the biggest takeaway, is that someone's not going to like your decision.
Oh, that's right. You're never going to please everyone, but yeah, it's interesting what you said about the people on the track in WA, because the Western States Trail is something that gets worked on a lot by a lot of
Right.
volunteers. So much work goes into it, but on the contrary, they're really proud to show it off. They want people to be on there running it, and they take great pride in making it perfect for race day. So yeah, it's an interesting mentality. You think if you were working really hard on that trail, you would be wanting runners to come and see what a great job you've done. Otherwise,
Mm.
what are you doing it for? I
Yeah,
don't
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it is a bit of a funny take. Yeah,
know.
yeah. Anyway, mate, I wanted to get back to Western States itself, your race performance. The first question I've got to ask after seeing some of your post-race, review, the loss of sight. What happened there? Have you been able to pinpoint what may have caused it? Have you bothered trying to look into it? Like, how do you even overcome something like that?
Well, I have got a fair idea. Somebody sent me a study, as you probably know, they do a lot of medical studies with the Western States participants every
Mm.
year. And a few years ago, they did do one on this loss of vision thing. So it's not an unknown phenomenon. It's not particularly common, but some of the factors that could lead to it include the altitude, cold weather, and wind. And we had all of those three things combined at the start of the race this year. And so, yeah, I went blind in my right eye from about the top of the escarpment, which is kilometre 6 or 7.
I was going to say that's so early.
Yeah, so early because I thought something had blown into my eye because it was so windy up the top there and it's very dusty. So I just thought, oh, a piece of dirt's gone into my eye. It'll get out eventually. But it never got any better. In fact, it got worse to the point I couldn't see at all out of that eye. Um, but it probably cleared up by I might have had 2 hours left in the race to run because it got better by the time it got dark, which I was grateful for because I was wondering how I was going to do that with a head torch and one eye. It was bad enough in the daylight. But yeah, I think that was a combination of those factors. So next time I will wear, I've just been out and bought some clear glasses, which is not something I've ever used before, but I'm
Mm.
hoping that could potentially fix it. And also, if you've never noticed Courtney Dauwalter at her aid station, she always puts eye drops in her eye. And I believe that's because she's had similar experiences and she's using that to try and avoid any potential problems with her vision. So maybe that's something that I need to get onto as well. But in terms of how you deal with it, it's like any challenge in an ultra, isn't it? You try and problem solve initially. So when I got to the first crude aid station, I said to my crew, I've lost the sight of my right eye. I've got no depth perception. Can you call ahead to the next aid station and ask them to ask the medical staff if there's anything they can do, which they did. So then when I got to Robinson Flat, my crew said, we talked to the medical staff. They're down there at that tent. You need to go see them when we're finished crewing you. So I went to see them and they performed some tests on me. I think it was to check whether I was having a stroke or something. I don't know. They didn't tell me the purpose. They just made me squeeze their hands and smile and I don't know, a few other things. And then they said, look, there's not really anything we can do. We can try putting some eye drops in it. But by this time, I'm like, oh, I've already wasted like 7 minutes at this aid station. I really need to get going. So I said, oh, I'm sure it'd be fine. And I just left. And then I had a couple more falls between there and probably Devil's Thumb. When I got to Devil's Thumb, the lady who's running the medical team there is someone that I'd actually met a few weeks before. And I said to her about the eye and she said, oh, let's put some eye drops in it and see what happens. So they did that and it didn't change anything. And so by that stage, I just gone, well, I've tried what I can try. There's nothing else I can do. It may get better. And I think that's the key mindset thing is that you never think, well, this is going to get worse or this is going to end my race or this is, you know, the worst possible thing that could happen. You just think it might get better. Just keep going. And that's what I did.
I love it. Was there any pain associated with it?
No, not at all. It was
Okay.
just cloudy. It wasn't like black. So I tried a few times just closing my left eye and looking through my right eye, and it was just kind of this grey cloud. So there was light getting in, but I couldn't actually make out any shapes or anything.
Yeah, crazy. So, do you think if there was pain associated with it, that would have started to freak you out a bit more? Do you think the fact that there was no pain was sort of just like, oh, it's just something else to solve now?
Oh yeah, I think it was one less thing to worry about that there wasn't any pain. I think I probably would have worried that it was something more serious if there'd been pain associated with it. But I've actually had a little bit of vision problems towards the ends of races before, which I
Right.
associate with hypoglycemia. So I thought, you know, I've done races or done parts of races with a bit less vision before and it's been okay, but I knew it wasn't that because it was so early into the race. I mean, there's no possible way I could have been
No.
hypoglycemic or dehydrated 6 kilometers into the race, especially with it being so cold. So, um, yeah, I guess it's all about how you think about something and if you let it build up and tell you that it's a catastrophe and that it's going to end your race and that perhaps I mean, I don't know if you followed the race. I think was it last year when David Roach pulled out because he
Yep.
had this health anxiety and he was
Yeah, crazy. He
so
thought he was going to
convinced
die.
that he was going to get rhabdo when he
Yeah.
had no signs of it whatsoever. So that's the thing you've got to avoid. You've just got to um, cut that thought off that it might be something really catastrophic and just be like, okay, well, I can't see. So what do I do? Like, I had planned to drop my poles off at Robinson Flat, I think, but I kept them with me, which meant that I was able to use them on the downhills because I couldn't really perceive the depth and see the rocks and stuff very well. So it helped me stay upright and I like, could have caught myself if I fell. So you just kind of adapt the plan without concentrating on the problem potentially being a race ending sort of thing.
Yeah, interesting. And when it comes, I mean, obviously the plan had to shift, like you were saying, but what was your general race strategy? Like, talk me through what race prep looked like. You obviously went over there a couple of, how early before the race? Was it 2 weeks before?
5 weeks.
Oh, wow. To be there that long.
Yeah.
Holy. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so what did that look like? And then did your race strategy shift the more time you spent out on course for that 5 weeks?
Yeah, so the reason I went 5 weeks early is because they have a training camp on over a long weekend in
Mhm.
May. And a few people that I spoke to here said it's unmissable. You really got to go to it. And
Mhm.
then once you're done, do you fly back to Australia for 4 weeks? No, like that's too expensive. So I stayed. And yeah, so what I did, because I hadn't obviously raced a miler before and I had never competed against any of the women, I don't think, that were doing the race this year, apart from Hanoka, the Japanese athlete that
Oh, yep, yep, yep.
Mira. But they had results from the previous year's Western States. So in order to try and make my plan, I kind of, well, what I really wanted was to finish in the top 10. And I thought, I don't think I'm good enough for the pointy end, but I might be able to sneak into the back end if I have a good day. So I got out the splits from last year's 10th place person, which was Emily Hawgood, and I basically copied them down. And then as I went out and ran sections of the course, I would update them based on how I ran that section in training, whether it was a bit faster or maybe a bit slower than what Emily had done. And so my plan was to start really conservatively. We live in a very flat area, so climbing is not my strength. And to start off with a 6K climb when you're not warmed up, I knew that the top females would go out really hard. And so my plan was just to take that first climb pretty easy and then, stay fairly conservative throughout towards all the way to the end of the canyons basically, and then just hit it as hard as I could from Forest Hill, where I know that's more runnable, and also probably my strength is more in the durability side of things as opposed to outright speed or climbing ability. So that was sort of my plan, and even despite the eye issue, I pretty much hit all the splits that I had planned and given to the crew pretty much bang on, and it finished I think 8 minutes slower than what I had planned, which was basically, so I hit the time that I planned. It was just the fact that it was such a fast race, and, that time any other year would have definitely put me in the top 10, but not this year. So that was okay. It was a learning experience in terms of adjust the plan based on the weather, because I had used those times from years where it was hotter, and this year obviously it was really cool, like perfect running conditions they described it as, and so of course everyone was going to go faster, and I think I was probably a bit on the conservative side because I haven't done a miler before, but you've got to start somewhere, and I would rather get to the finish in 17 3/4 hours than not make it to the finish. So yeah, I'm happy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right talking about the race conditions, and you probably just ran into the fact that it was such a fast year. Like when you look at, and that's across the whole field, right? It was insane just seeing everyone just flying. And then even the casualties, like the amount of men that have podiumed in years gone by that DNF'd, champions of the sport, like Killian and Dan Jones and obviously Jim. Like it was crazy. Just seeing the pace that like Hans went out at, like it's wild. Yeah, it makes you wonder, do you think it was sort of like capturing lightning in a bottle, and like to break those course records again, that you're going to have to get those conditions? Do you think there's any way you can run that fast? I mean, obviously you haven't run in a hotter race, so I guess it's hard for you to know, but what does your intuition tell you?
I think as a whole, the level is getting so much higher so quickly that I don't think it will be as long as we think it will be to see those records fall again. I think people thought that Courtney's record was going to last forever. And yeah, we've seen that go down by someone who's in literally their first miler. I think if Jen comes back next year, which I'm assuming she will have another year of improving, racing those distances, learning about the course, and training specifically for it for an entire year, as opposed to waiting for a golden ticket to get in. I think she could quite possibly break it again next year. Obviously the conditions do play a role, but I don't think it was super cold the year Courtney set her record. So
Right.
I don't think it needs to be perfect conditions. Probably it wouldn't happen in a year that it's really, really hot. Um, but yeah, I just think as a whole, the level's getting so much higher that the weather's not going to play as much of a role in the times as it has done previously.
Yeah, true. And what do you think are the biggest needle movers of like improved performance? Like what are you doing personally that has helped level yourself up? Like obviously you said that was your first miler, but I mean, you're a well-established distance runner. You've got plenty of accolades that we could tick off. But what has changed in like your training approach that has led to some big improvements, or at least your confidence to be competitive at 100 miles?
Well, obviously the biggest change has been since not long after Tarawera I stopped working. So I was working full time in a high pressure sort of role where I was managing a team of 10 people and in the government. It was very stressful, and I only went into the office once or twice a week. But when I did, it's a 4 hour, 2 hours each way on the train. Um, and so I didn't used to have any recovery time. I'd be up at 4:30 doing a hard training session, and then I'd be either straight on the computer at home or on the train heading into work. So I think obviously for me, that's a massive game changer. The fact that I now can sleep a proper 8 hours and still get up and get two training sessions done during the day. I fully appreciate this is not going to last forever, by the way. So I'm trying to make the most of it while I can. But yeah, recovery is obviously key. Um, I think the high carb fueling is another key, and that's probably somewhere where I've still got a bit of work to do. Um, and uh, what else? I mean, personally, for me, I do a lot of strength training. I know that's not something that everybody enjoys, and not every runner does it. But for me, in terms of preventing injuries, since I mean, I've always done gym work, but probably doing heavier stuff in more recent years, and a lot of prehab, rehab type stuff to make sure I don't get any more bone stress injuries or any ITB issues or whatever. So that's allowed me to be more consistent, which I think is definitely helping with my results.
That's so good to hear. I had honestly no idea about the prevalence of strength training in your regime and lifting heavier. I think it's such an important message to get out there. And I know it's easy to, you know, steel man the case of, you know, you don't need that top end peak strength, but I think that gets like misconstrued, and you're right, you don't need to be the strongest person out there, but you're not training to be a power lifter. You're still making sure that you've got resilience enough to offset, like you just said, those bone stress injuries. The prevalence that I'm starting to see now, obviously spending more time in the running world, you know, it's you're not thinking about bone stress when you're coming from a strength sports background like I have, or rugby league background. It's yeah, it's rife. And the amount of women that I'm seeing with all like these sacrum stress fractures and stuff like that, it breaks my heart, because we obviously run because we're passionate and we want to experience these things. And to think that there's a physical way to intervene on all these things, there's no excuse not to be doing it now. Like, there's too much information out there. You're pretty much just getting around with your head in the sand, in my opinion. You've just got to find the I think the right coach to at least get you started on some movements, and more or less give you an understanding of why. I think once you get that answered, it makes a lot more sense. So that's really cool to hear that you take part in a heap of strength training. What does a typical strength training session look like for you?
Yeah, so I'll start off with, well, obviously after a warm up, I'll do a couple of major heavy lifts. So over 3 sessions a week, I will probably do Bulgarian split squats, back squats, hip thrusts, deadlifts, um, and like straight leg and bent leg calf raises. They would be the major ones. And then after those, I'll do some accessory work like core stuff. Abductor, adductor, glute med, clamshells, that sort of thing. Prior to Western States, because I knew there was a lot of downhill running in the course and I don't have anywhere to train that, I was doing lots of like eccentric step downs, step ups, lots of like things to try and just work my quads and make sure I got that sort of strength in there without being able to apply that in a real world setting. That was all I could sort of do. So yeah, I'll look at the event that I've got coming up and think about what specific strength do I need for that race. Is it climbing? Is it downhill? Is it hiking? And then I'll just adapt the smaller exercises in my strength routine to reflect that. So like looking at Costa Cosi coming up, it's a long way on the road. It's probably going to be cambered. You have to stay on the right-hand side of the road for most of the way. So we're looking at like single leg, unilateral stuff, balance, stability, making sure I'm not going to get an ITB injury or some sort of hip thing because I'm running on an uneven surface for so long. So, yeah, that's how I do it.
Yeah, all things to consider. Hey, I didn't realize that you were taking on Coast to Cozy. That's cool. Have you done it before?
No, this is the first time, so
Oofed.
very exciting, a bit nervous, but yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It looks stunning. Yeah, I was hoping to enter, but I bloody DNF the other month, so I wasn't able to get my qualies.
Next year,
So,
next
yeah,
year.
that's what it's all about. Yeah, it looks like a stunning event. I mean, when you look at the race profile, though, I think any person that looks at that just says you've all got rocks in your head. You're going to run how far and then run the highest mountain in the country to finish it off.
Yeah, I know it's totally crazy, but what I love about it is the fact that you can have your crew with you basically from after 24 Ks, you can have them with you the whole rest of the race, which, that's so unique in terms of ultra running. And yeah, it's going to be just a big party, I think.
Yeah, particularly in Australia, like you said, yeah, to have your crew there, it's been a big attractant for me. And I was even thinking if I didn't get in, I wouldn't mind trying to get down there anyway,
Yeah,
and just check it out. I'm sure there'd be someone that would be willing to to get a helping hand somewhere, and yeah,
absolutely.
have a look at all the just the way that the race flows, and potentially what you can learn for your own experience as a competitor. I think
Oh,
you'd always
agree.
stand to gain something. And it's also only a week apart from UTA COSI as well, I think.
Yes, yes. So
Yeah,
put
I
it
think
out
they're
there that you want
a
to pace
week apart.
someone, and maybe there'll be someone looking for a pacer, and that way you can have an experience of the course as well.
Yeah, that's not a bad shout because I think I may end up down there. I've got a couple of clients that are going to run the 100K event at COSI. So, it gets my creative juices flowing.
Yes.
And you mentioned earlier about high carb, the nutrition side of things. When you first, I guess the first question is like, what has running looked like for Holly in your life? Like where did running start? How did that look, and what were you doing, nutrition wise then versus what you're doing now?
Yeah, it's very different. So I started running when I was about 18 or 19.
Okay.
I've never run at all as a part, like apart from, as part of netball or I played just soccer in high school. So I had a boyfriend at the time who was into running and kind of started a little group just with some friends, teaching us how to run, say the 5K fun run or whatever. And then we got involved in, so I grew up in Tassie and we had the Launceston, well, it used to be the Launceston Running Club. It's now the I don't know, athletics club or something. Anyway, they used to run a handicap race every Saturday. So there'd be you go to a different location, it would be a different distance, and they'd handicap all the runners. So the faster runners would start at the back, the slower runners start first. And the idea is that you all finish at the same time, which never happens. But, and that's, yeah, I just love that. And that's how I got into running. I probably did that for a year or so before I got into triathlon. And then things sort of changed because I started to take that really seriously, and then moved to Adelaide and yeah, started doing like 70.3 triathlons. I did get my professional license. I didn't race a great deal as a professional because I started getting stress fractures, but back then no one knew what they were. It took a really long time to get them diagnosed and get them fixed. So both of them took me out for over 6 months, and I started to get really frustrated. And yeah, I was trying to compete against people doing it full time when I was doing full time uni and working 3 jobs. So I just got a bit frustrated and said, I'll pick this back up when I've finished studying or whatever, sometime in the future, and transitioned to cycling. And I just did cycling exclusively for probably 6 or 7 years. I didn't run at
Wow.
all. And then, yeah, I moved to the Northern Territory, where cycling wasn't really like I'd been competing in the National Road Series, but continuing to fly down to the southeast corner to race in that got a bit tiresome, and there wasn't as good training facilities up in
Hmm.
Darwin. So I was looking for something else to do and stumbled across the Run Larapinta race out of Alice Springs. It's a 3-day stage race run by the Rapid Ascent people. And
Yep.
yeah, went down and did that and absolutely loved it. And that was sort of my introduction to trail running and ultra running. And yeah, I've done a variety of things since, but yeah, have sort of stuck with the ultra running vibe in various sort of formats. And yeah, but in terms of fueling, like when I first started, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't eat before running. I didn't probably eat during running. I probably didn't eat much after running, and that's how I ended up with so many stress fractures.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I'm a lot wiser, but I look back on how I saw some sports doctors. I even saw an endocrinologist and things throughout the time when I was suffering from the early stress fractures. And even then, when I got back into running, I had another two stress fractures in maybe 2020 and 2023, and they were in the neck of my femur, which is a really high risk sort of area. And definitely for the first couple, but maybe also maybe 2020, nobody ever asked me about how I was eating. Nobody ever asked me about whether I was doing any strength training. Nobody looked at my hormone levels or anything. It was just like, yeah, there was no knowledge about it, which I just find it blows my mind now as an allied health practitioner and as an athlete. And, even though I don't spend a lot of time on social media, I know that all the information is out there. So it's kind of crazy to me that it took so long to figure out what was going on. And I'm pretty lucky that I caught it when I did, because I've been able to, with the strength training and some hormone therapy and stuff, kind of reverse the deficits in the bone density that I had. But yeah, I think now we should be able to prevent that from happening to people. So hopefully younger women are understanding what ultra running does to your bones and how you can prevent it, and doing all those things preventatively instead of trying to catch up afterwards like I have been.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you've come out the other side of that. Was there a time, like with that femoral neck stress fracture? Obviously, it is a very serious one. I've got a client that I work with at the moment, and he's been dealing with all sorts of stuff over the last few years. And we finally think that, yeah, it's to do with some energy deficiency stuff as well. And was there a time where you questioned whether you should keep running, or was that something thrust upon you by some of the doctors and stuff like that? Was there anyone that was just like, would just stop running?
There probably was, but I would have completely ignored them. But there's definitely been times, in fact, every time I'd get a major injury like that, I would start to think, my body's not cut out for this.
Mm.
Maybe I should just go back to cycling. Well, that's why I went to cycling in the first place. But something always draws me back. There's just something different about running. I don't know. I think it's the purity of it, not having to rely on anything else, not having to worry about an expensive bike that, there's no chance of getting a flat tire when you go out running. Yeah, being able to explore, oh, well, I guess now that with mountain bikes and e-bikes and stuff, there's pretty much, you can get around just about anywhere, but I think there's just a little bit more freedom almost in running. And yeah, there's something that I love about it so much that I just can't put away. And now, I mean, those injuries used to seem catastrophic. And when you're staring down the barrel of, say, 6 months, like going, 3 months off your feet and then 3 months building back up, it seems like it's going to take forever. But now, as an older person, I can look back and say that actually goes so fast. And, a couple of years down the track, you won't even remember that happened. So I think I'd be more philosophical about it nowadays. But yeah, definitely it was panic stations when it was happening to me before.
Yeah, it's always tricky when you're right in the injury itself, right? It's easy to catastrophize and think about what you're missing out on and stuff like that. But I think that's a really important message for people to hear what you just said then. Like looking back now, it really is just a drop in the ocean. And, if you just given up and, were conceded to the fact that, okay, maybe running isn't for me, maybe I'm not built for this. Like look at all the things that you wouldn't have achieved. It's crazy. So I think it's a really inspirational side of your story about, the level of perseverance. And it's obviously a testament to your character to not want to take no for an answer and know that I think that's something that's really powerful about ultra running is the personal responsibility. Like it's ultimately up to you. yes, we require an amazing team around us to get us to these start lines and then to get us through the race itself with the support that we receive. But ultimately, if things start to fail between your two ears, you're not really going to have much longevity in the sport. I don't think it takes a pretty resilient person, no matter whether you're fast or slow. If you finished an ultra, like you've got some dog in you, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's something you can be extra proud of as well. Like if you've overcome a lot of things to get where you are, to me, maybe it's just because I feel like I have done that. Yeah, there's an extra level of pride and kind of self-belief and self-efficacy that comes with that. You know that you can meet those challenges and get past them. I don't know if anyone's ever had a complete smooth sailing sort of life. I don't know if you get into ultras if you had that sort of life, but yeah,
Mm.
I think people should be not overlook the challenges that they've overcome and use that as part of their um, their mindset strategy in terms of ultra racing. Because even if it's not, say, a hard event or race that you've done, if it's a hard thing that you've overcome in life, that's proven to you that you can do hard things. And yeah, I think that's all part of it, part of the mindset.
Yeah. Could you say more on that? You just said earlier that you don't think you'd probably be attracted to ultra marathons if you'd had a smooth sailing life. Do you think that running for you, like, did you use that as a tool, or, did triathlons or cycling, was that something to help regulate you in other parts of your life that maybe weren't going the way you wanted them to go?
I don't know, there is that school of thought that all ultra runners have had some sort of trauma in their past, that they say that, but um, yeah, possibly. I mean, there's nothing specific I can point to in terms of, I was running away from this or escaping that. But I think just the discipline for me was addictive and the way that it gives structure to my life and having that habit of going out training first thing in the morning, the way it makes you feel and the way it makes you perform in the rest of your life. I think I'm addicted to that. And I don't think I could give it up. Even if I had to give up racing, I would still go exercise or train just because I enjoy the way it makes me feel. And I think it makes me a better person in all the other aspects of my life.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, what areas of your life do you think it improves you? Like, is it like mood regulation? Is it perspective on things? Like, what are some of the things? Are you ever thinking about these things while you're out on a run?
Yeah, sometimes. So I think it improves my ability to concentrate and to focus, particularly on my study. And sometimes I do think about ideas. So I'm doing a PhD at the moment. Obviously, a lot of that is just thinking. So running is a good chance to do that. And I think sometimes when you're just in that meditative state, things come to you that you
Hmm.
wouldn't have thought about if you were sitting at the computer and trying to force yourself to focus or come up with something brilliant. But I think mood, as you said, like everyone around me can see if I haven't been for a run. My partner knows, if I'm a bit grumpy, he's like, "Have you been for a run today? You better get out there."
At least he knows what helps center you, hey?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh gosh, there'd be a lot more aspects. I think just when challenging situations come up, it's that knowing that you can do hard things, that you can, and that things will pass too. Like knowing that
Mm.
in a race you go through a tough time, a downtime mentally, or maybe you're having some pain or something that you've got to deal with. But it will pass, and you can apply that to life as well when things get rough at work or at home or whatever. This is just a phase and we'll come out the other side, just like with running.
Yeah, absolutely. I was having that thought the other day that ultra marathons themselves are this weird extrapolation of time, in the sense that they're a really long event compared to other sports, but in the scheme of your life, it's such a short time. But the amount of hardship and introspection that you can just cram into such a compressed amount of your lifespan is so heightened. And I think that's a big part, at least for me, about the attractant of, these race distances that are pretty much, I think the 100 mile is the gateway. And then once you start going beyond that sort of 24-hour mark, and you start throwing in sleep deprivation and stuff like that. Like I've not pushed myself to that point yet. It's something that is an attractant to me, and I'm keen to thrust myself into that environment just through. I think a lot of my training comes down to curiosity. I'm just a naturally curious person. It's why I like to have conversations, why I want to have conversations with people like yourself, Holly, is to just see other people's perspective. Like, what do we share in common? Where do we differ? Like, is there something that I could take away? And is there something that you could learn from me? Like, I think ultras, it starts to peel away ability and there's transfer across the board. But yeah, it is amazing how much you can force into such a small period of time. I don't know, but at the same time, you can have like the longest kilometer of your life. You know what I mean? Like, how have we only gone this far? This is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, Anne Trayson, who's a 14-time winner of Western States and just an absolute ultra legend, she said something about it being a lifetime in one day, Western States.
Mm,
So, and she has this analogy of how, you start off when you're young and fresh and enthusiastic, and by the end of the day, you're 100 years old and you've got gained all this wisdom and all this knowledge about yourself, but you're also old and tired and, you feel like you're at the end of the journey. So, yeah, I like that. I think it's true.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So anyone who is thinking about doing a 100 miler, just fucking do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, yes. Work up to it though. Don't just
Work up to
think
it.
from
Yes,
nothing.
yes. But don't think you ever can't. I think that's the other thing. So people are like, oh, there's no way I could ever do that. And I think, I don't know whether it was just blind stupidity, but I literally just started with the idea of, could I just keep moving for 100 miles? Like that's all my expectation of myself was. It's not how fast could I possibly go. It was like, can I look down at my watch and I see, 160 Ks? And the answer to that was yes. And like I didn't have a massive training, history behind me. Like I'd only been at it for a couple of years. And yeah, I think it obviously helps. I probably am in a position where I don't realize how much knowledge I have about like just human physiology with my coaching background and stuff like that. And I can sort of problem solve a lot of things that the average person couldn't. But at the same time, it's not like I'm some crazy freak, you know what I mean? I think it just, there has to be some sort of internal motivating factors to get it done. Otherwise, I think it gets far easier. Your mind is very good at seeking comfort, right? It just wants everything to stop. So if you don't have that resilience to try and block that part of your brain out, it gets very difficult very quickly. But at the same time, I mean, I'm sure you've experienced multiple times in your racing career those breakthroughs so deep into a race where you have like this newfound freshness and it just doesn't seem physiologically possible that you could be possessing this energy. Is there any race in particular that you can remember that maybe resembles something like that?
Oh, all the time, every race, I think you're going on this roller coaster of ups and downs. And yeah, just remembering that there will be another up, even if it doesn't feel like it right now.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think there is in every race, whether it's it could be just taking on some more nutrition helps you get back to that positive place, or it could be seeing your crew or getting to a point of the course that you know, or yeah, all sorts of things. But I think in terms of people taking on a 100 miler, you don't also need to think about can I walk or run 100 miles? You can just think about can I take a step and then can I take another step and then can I take one more step? You don't need to think about the whole distance, but if you can take one more step continuously, then you will eventually get there. And I think that's the awesome thing about running is that it's so accessible. It's not like you have to go, it's not like gymnastics or something where you will have to
Mm.
train in a technical skill for years and years to be able to execute, the end result. With everyone knows how to walk, right? And if you can walk 100 miles. So yeah,
It's
it's
true.
wanting to and yeah, having the willingness to put yourself out there and do it.
Absolutely. And I think that's the unsung power of backyard ultras too, is the fact that I think a big limiting factor for 100 miler DNFs is literally just speed, like just going out too hard too early, even if you don't realize that that's what you're doing. And naturally forcing you to slow down by nature of the rules and only being able to run 6.7 Ks every hour. I read some stat, I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was there was more 100 milers in the backyard performance than there were finishers of 100-mile races.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so I'm so encouraging of people who are sitting on the fence for that to go and sign up for a backyard. It's like, okay, it might not be the crazy trail adventure that, someone's personality might be aspiring to, but you'll still learn so many of the baseline, tenets that make a good 100-mile runner out in that format. And just by able to gain that experience, uh, you never know what you're going to learn and how big you can go. And I also think it's a very safe way to build a whole heap of training volume because it lacks that intensity. What has your experience been with recovery on, like, let's say Western States versus, say, Dead Cow? I mean, obviously the distance traveled was so much further in Dead Cow versus Western States, but on a typical backyard event versus a 100-mile or an equivalent race, like what does the recovery look like for you personally?
I think each race is a bit individual, to be honest. I think having done the backyards, I think what you're saying is totally true. And I've drawn a lot of confidence from knowing that I've done those mileages. So going into the 100 miler, for a lot of people who'd be debuting at the miler distance, it could be a bit overwhelming. But for me, I knew I've done 400 Ks in a backyard ultra. So 100 miles is not going to be that bad. I just got to do it a bit quicker and not stop. But so that's another reason I think if you are someone that needs to build your confidence by seeing that you've actually done something, do the mileage in a backyard ultra and then go and apply it to a point to point or a non-stop sort of race. But in terms of recovery, see, I've only done 3 backyard ultras. The first one was cancelled prematurely because there was a lightning storm. So that was, I didn't need much recovery from that. In fact, I think 2 weeks later, I went and ran a 12-hour, like a timed ultra, because I was so mad that that backyard ultra had been cancelled. Um, then the second one, I was only just coming back from a stress fracture, so I pulled the plug at 38 hours. And I think I recovered pretty well from that one. Then Dead Cow, I actually had a hematoma in my quad and I was unable to run or even walk properly for weeks and weeks afterwards. So sometimes I do have freak injuries like that. I had something a bit similar after one of the 24 hours that I did where my whole leg swelled up and went purple and I was in hospital for a couple of days and then off my feet for
Oh,
weeks. Whereas like after Western States, Phil was trying to get me to come for a run with him the day after because he didn't want to break his run streak. But I said no thanks. But the second day, I did go for like a shuffle, and the main thing was that I had another like purple toenail that was really painful. That was the
right.
main thing stopping me. And like obviously my quads were really sore from all the downhill
Mm.
running and just the general running. But I was actually able to move, and so I think I did like 4 short runs the week after Western States, and then from then on, it's just been sort of returned to normal training gradually. So it's been a really easy recovery actually, and I think that's mainly to do with all the strength training that I put in before the race.
Yeah, interesting. And to look at your training background, do you think the years on the bike have been really advantageous for you building such a large aerobic base? I mean, obviously you didn't have the strength, behind you there when you were just on the bike and you've had to close that gap. But do you think from a physiological standpoint and aerobic standpoint, the bikes really helped get you where you are in the sport?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I always tell myself I want to do more cycling. I've still got all my bikes, and I think, I should do a lot more cross training on the bike, but then the specificity of the run and the time efficiency of it, the bang for buck sort of thing that you get for the hours invested in running, yeah, I always end up doing more running and less cycling. And, I think the longer you get out of cycling, the more fear you build up about getting back on the roads and the drivers and the whatnot. So, yeah, I've still got a wind trainer and yeah, do
Yep.
a little bit of that. But I definitely think that if you want to up your volume without upping the cost on your body, or if you're someone that's really injury prone or something like that, and a lot of the elites are using it. I know Caitlin Fielder, she's on the bike all the time because her husband George is a professional cyclist, so it kind of makes sense. But there are definitely other professional ultra runners that are using the bike as a tool. So yeah, I definitely encourage that.
Yeah, it's fascinating seeing all these different training theories starting to arise, even at the top of the field. And I think that should feel people with confidence, not overwhelm, that there is so many ways to succeed in the sport that you don't just have to be stuck to one way. And it's not that running alone is a bad thing either. Like if that's the way you want to do it, as long as you can, like you said, maintain the recovery cost of that, yeah, have at it. Is there any like non-running tools that you go to regularly to help support your training, or do you mainly find yourself using running as the main training source?
Running would be the major thing, and yeah, a little bit of bike here and there. Obviously, gym probably 2 or 3 times a week. Leading up to Western States, I did a lot of sauna training, just because yeah, I was expecting a hot race, but I do think that that's beneficial, regardless of whether you're going to a hot race or not. I mean,
Mhm.
particularly so if you are, but also it increases blood plasma volume and it helps with recovery and a lot of other things. So I think that's a tool that we should be using, either the sauna or a hot bath if you've got, depending on what you've got access to. Obviously, altitude training, I probably underrated the importance of that leading into Western States and was a bit complacent about the impact that altitude would
Yeah,
have.
right.
So that's definitely a tool I would want to be using more, but I have looked into renting the systems in Australia and it's hideously expensive, like over the duration that you need to use them. So I'm not sure how practical that is, but I do think that's really a game changer. Like since coming back, even though it's, I think, 3 weeks since we've come back from altitude, I'm still feeling the benefits of it. Like my fitness is better. So yeah, I don't know. We need that's another solution we need in Australia, altitude training.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And it's funny, I was only looking at some like altitude tents last week and stuff as well, just out of curiosity, in the science space of it all. And yeah, there's definitely something to be said about, the athlete manager, like you were saying, hey, like just move to the States, and the specificity and being able to be in the mountains, whether it's the US or in Europe, we just don't have that altitude that is so beneficial. Yeah, you can imagine that if you were to do, a season over there and come back over here, it'd be interesting to see you take on some courses that you've run previously and see if you could look at smashing some course records or something back here and see what things sort of worked off the back of all that altitude training.
Oh, definitely. That'd be really interesting. And, all the pros really did spend time at altitude before Western States. Most of them were training in a place called Flagstaff in Arizona,
Hmm.
which is altitude plus also hot and lots of mountains to run. And I was a bit blasé about why they would be doing that. Why wouldn't they be on the course doing really specific training? And then when I moved up to near the race start, which is at about 1,800 meters, 2 weeks before the race, I went, oh, okay, that's why they're doing the altitude training because it actually sucks being up here. It's really hard to run. And I went out on a training run with Caitlin Fielder and Fiona Pascal, and
Oh,
Caitlin
cool.
lives in Andorra, which is like, I don't know, 2,000, no, over 2,000 meters. And, I was like, I couldn't move. They just ran off on me on not particularly challenging terrain. It's just because I didn't have that adaptation to the altitude. So, yeah, I think because are not exposed to it here, we
Mm.
probably underrate its importance. But, and yeah, I don't know the solution. It's not practical for everyone to just up and move overseas. It kind of sucks.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is what it is.
we need someone to make a cost effective altitude tent
That's
somehow.
what we need. Yes.
Yeah.
Or altitude training facilities where we can go and run on treadmills or I don't know, yeah, sleep there or something. I don't know.
Yeah, there's got to be something because I mean, yeah, the benefits for all distances. Like, I don't know if you saw much of like Josh Kerr's prep for the 1 mile world record, but he was like sleeping in that thing for like 12 hours. Like he'll just
Wow.
be, yeah, he had one at his house and he's just chilling in it for most of the day. So, the fact that it's having such profound benefits for sprinters,
Yeah.
essentially that's what it is. It's a 1 mile sprint,
Yeah.
all the way up. Yeah, it's definitely a part of racing that makes it a little bit more difficult as a sea level person here in Australia.
Yeah, we certainly
Yeah.
have more than our fair share of challenges here.
Yeah, but like you said, even just the cost of getting over there and the fact that it was cheaper to stay there for another 5 weeks. Like I was always looking at races, as most of us guys always looking at something, right? Looking at Leadville, and I saw there's like a guaranteed entry if you do the camp there, but it's like 8 weeks prior, and then you start weighing up, and it's like, yeah, I'd probably be better off just staying over there. But then you're like, "No, I've got a young family. It's like, how viable is that? You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
yeah, it sucks, and it would be cool if there was a way to garner the interest from internationals to get out here for more races. I mean, it was so cool to see Caleb Olsen running out here last year, and so it just goes to show that it can happen. It just yeah, I hope that, I don't know, maybe UTA can continue to grow to a point where we can get more internationals coming out. But I guess it's hard when the exposure and the money that's already there behind these US and European races, it almost feels like you're starting so far behind the eight ball. Like, will we ever be able to flip the momentum?
Yeah, I know it is really hard, but yeah, you're right. UTA is a good start. Even having Dan Jones and Ruth Croft come over, if they're in New Zealand, it's not that far for them to come, but it's really
Hmm,
high profile and raises the profile of the
absolutely.
event to have them. And there's a lot of up and coming athletes in the Asia region. Miao Yao, obviously she's already right up there, but there's other up and comers from Hong Kong, China, Japan that we could be getting over here. Nepal, there's some really talented runners from
Really?
Nepal. And then it's interesting, you would have seen that Sean's got a really good lineup coming for the Melbourne Front Yard Ultra next year. There's a lot of international people, a few that haven't been announced yet that I know are coming. And he has made it financially viable, I guess, to get these people over for a backyard ultra. So if he can do that, surely there's a way for these trail races um, to do something similar. And all you need, you can start off with just a couple of big names. You don't need 20 elite
No.
runners to get the interest in it. We saw that with UTA 50K, just have that battle between Ruth and Miao Yao, and all the media was focusing their attention on that. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I think make that big investment in a couple of key people, and you really raise the profile, and then it's a snowball effect, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And I hope, that more race directors are beginning to talk to one another as well. And even like a big corporation like UTMB, I hope, they don't want to just siphon it all up and make them the exclusive event on each continent. I think it's important to have like these supporting races and stuff like that thriving and bringing people into it. Maybe they are a little bit more cost effective and stuff like that. So the barriers to entry for newer participants aren't there and stuff like that. So that's where I'd like to see the sport continue to go, is probably more integration, because like you said, Sean does such an amazing job. It was so cool to meet him in person, racing over there last month, and the passion that he has and the passion of his volunteers, like that whole community over there, they are just so heavily invested in the sport. It was so cool because it's so different to what we have here on the East Coast. I don't know if it's just I mean, it growing up in Tassie, it's just that lack of population. You've got that real sense of community and wanting to look out for each other. And that's definitely what he sort of bleeds through, and just constantly trying to improve opportunity for people coming here and racing, and, linking up with overseas events that get you automatic entries and stuff like that, or extra qualification points, any little advantage that you can get as an Aussie here, as we've sort of mentioned multiple times on the potty, how many logistical things are working against us, financial things, managing work and careers and families. It's difficult, but you don't ever want to let it get in the way. Particularly someone like yourself, I've always said it, like you should be getting these opportunities. Like I hate that you're sort of put in that position, like you said earlier, where, oh, I can see why a brand may not want to engage with me because I'm not big on social media, or I care so much about the process of my racing. I feel like you should be able to bypass so much of that based on talent. You know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean you put a stone wall up and say, I'm fucking Holly Ranson, fuck off, I don't want to talk to you. I just need to focus. Like we want to hear more of your story. And I thought Fractal did a great job of doing that in the Western States build up. And, obviously they're only a tiny company. Like they've got, if you're telling me that some of the big international brands are only given 100K. I can't imagine how small those poor bastards' budget is to be able to help you and stuff like that. So I think we need more support from these international brands to help bolster up and get every, because if all of a sudden you can develop a professional profile for yourself overseas, and then you are coming back, like more people are going to know who you are. And then, maybe maybe they're an international and they've seen you race over there. So they know you're going to come back and race domestically. So they want to come and check out. And it's like, oh, well, if Holly's racing it, I'm going to race it. So all of a sudden, it comes full circle. So yeah, look, I really hope that, the sport continues to take positive steps forward. And I hope that we don't eat ourselves while we're still too young in the process.
Yeah, I think again that probably comes back to, can we get somebody that's advocating for us, that might be looking at, can we get bulk deals on travel or insurance, or maybe they're going to UTMB and saying, hey, this new sustainability carbon tax thing that you've introduced really unfairly disadvantages Australians who find it hard enough and expensive enough to get over to UTMB and associated events anyway. Can we look at doing something that's more sustainable for Australian athletes? Can we, is there some other way around it? But unfortunately, we just don't have that voice, and we're not in a situation like, for example, Athletics Australia, where everybody that wants to compete in an athletics race in Australia is going to have to be registered with Athletics Australia in order to compete. If we had that for trail running, we would have a governing body that had 25,000 members, but we don't, which means there's no funding for that body. The body's volunteer. They're, maybe just not advocating for the trail running community as strongly as what we need at this stage in our development. And I don't know, maybe I hope that if I can continue to raise my profile, perhaps I'll be in a position where I can make some difference to that, but, I can't do it by myself. So yeah, there's, I guess, a lot of room to grow, both as a community, and then by getting people that are passionate about it to stand up and actually try and make some changes to how things are done in Australia.
Yeah, well, I hope it continues to move that way, and I hope other successful Aussies and Kiwis continue to use their profile, like just like Dan and Ruth have been as well. Like you said, I think it's really, really cool. I guess moving forward from like a racing context, like you said, you got Coast to Cozzy at the end of the year. So do you have ambitions to go back to Western States next year? Like, is that the focus, to try and get a golden ticket and get back there again?
Think I will try. I haven't sat down and really planned out what I'll do in terms of the golden ticket chase. I'm not a mad fan of going back to the same race multiple times, because there's so many races for us to see and so many places to experience. But ultimately, Tarawera is so accessible to us. All the other golden ticket races are very far away and very expensive to get to. I'm actually entered in CCC, but I'll be letting my ticket go to waste because I can't afford to go to Europe now after
Yeah.
having gone to Western States. Javelina I won't be able to go to because it's the same, or very close to Coast to Cozzy. So only the golden ticket races in that next half of the first half of 2027 are sort of open to me. And I think some of the ones that are really close to Western States are a bit, I don't want to get my golden ticket that late because I want to have a really dedicated
Yeah, good
training
training
block.
block.
So yeah, look, chances are I probably will go back to Tarawera if the recovery from Coast to Cozzy goes well, because I think you just got to throw your hat in the ring, don't you? I'd love to go back to Western States. So whether it's next year, whether it's the year after, who knows? But I'll definitely be looking to make it happen at some stage.
Oh, well, I can't wait to see you out there, mate. I'm sure you will get back there, whatever that looks like in whatever capacity. Again, I want to thank you so much for giving me your time. I could continue to talk trails for hours with you, mate. It was a very, very easy conversation. And thank you again so much for being the first guest on the Dose of Benny podcast.
Thanks, Benny. It was great to chat with you.
Thanks so much, mate. I look forward to talking in the future, I hope.